Often the question arises, should I participate in the Small Business Innovation Research Program or the Small Business Technology Transfer Program? Which one is best for me? Well, both programs have 3 phases and are focused on developing innovative solutions to pressing problems that can then be commercialized as new products and services or improvements to existing ones. So which one is best? There are 2 key differences between SBIR and STTR. First, an STTR project requires the small business, which is always the applicant, to be teamed with a nonprofit research institution, typically a university or federal lab. The STTR program is focused on the transfer of technology from the research institution, also referred to as the RI, to the small business and ultimately to the marketplace through a phase 1, 2, 3 sequence. Over time, the STTR has flexed to include situations where the innovation belongs to the small business, but the firm desires to include important resources from a nonprofit RI in the technology's development. Research institutions typically have sophisticated laboratories and personnel with needed expertise that can enhance the face validity of a team. Now, there are a number of other more subtle differences between SBIR and STTR. One very important difference is the primary employment of the project's principal investigator, or the PI. In an SBIR project, the principal investigator must be primarily employed at the proposing small business, meaning he or she cannot work full-time elsewhere during the project. Now, with an STTR, the PI could be primarily employed at either the RI or the small business. Another important difference between the 2 programs is that up to 60% of the research effort for an STTR project can be subcontracted, whereas there is a 33% limit on phase 1 SBIR subcontracting. The SBIR limit increases to 50% in phase 2, but it is still less than what is allowed in an STTR. There are several misunderstandings about what can be funded with an STTR. One misconception is that a university can apply for an STTR. This is incorrect, as the name Small Business Technology Transfer clarifies the applicant must always be a small, for-profit business. Another misconception is the belief that STTR is less focused on commercialization than SBIR. However, both Congress and the federal agencies intend STTR projects to lead to products and services in phase 3. And while it once was true that a project that began as an STTR in phase 1 had to remain as an STTR in phase 2, the 2011 reauthorization permits a phase 1 STTR award to morph to an SBIR in phase 2 and vice versa. Now, let's take a look at situations where it's best to apply for an SBIR award. In general, the SBIR program will be a better opportunity in the following situations. First, when you submit an SBIR proposal, you can include a subcontractor if you wish. The subcontractor could be another company, large or small, or a university or another type of research institution, such as a federally funded research and development center, or FFRDC. However, if you don't plan to include a nonprofit research entity in your project at all, then the STTR program is not a consideration. STTR must always include a research institution. Second, if you decide to subcontract to a research institution, but don't need to subcontract more than 33% of a phase 1 research effort to the RI, then SBIR is the most appropriate. You can still involve and work with the university or RI, but through an SBIR. Now third, if the personnel at the RI prefers to participate in the project as independent consultants rather than as representatives of the university or federal lab, then SBIR would be appropriate. A small firm hiring consultants does not qualify for STTR because there is no nonprofit research institution acting as a subcontractor. Another reason to opt for SBIR is that some phase 3 investors may not like the idea of a nonprofit being involved with the project. This may be because of perceptions about the culture of such participants or concerns about the nonprofit's claim to intellectual property rights on the project. In this case, an SBIR would be the most appropriate. Finally, small firms and RIs should not jump into a hastily contrived relationship with each other just to fit the STTR program. If these partners do not have a past working history, or if otherwise either party does not feel completely comfortable with one another, then an STTR should not be pursued, and the small firm may opt to submit an SBIR instead that involves a less intensive and less collaborative relationship. So we just outlined when it is best to consider SBIR. Now let's explore when it's best to consider STTR, keeping in mind that all agencies do not offer STTR programs. So STTR might be better choice in the following situations. First, you need to subcontract a large portion of the award in order to gain the needed expertise. SBIR Phase 1 projects constrain the use of subcontractors because no more than 33% of the research can be subcontracted. STTR is much more generous, allowing for up to 60% of the R&D to go to the nonprofit RI. So another situation, let's say the principal investigator, also referred to as the PI, is primarily employed at the research institution and wants to stay there. If, for example, the PI is tenured faculty at the RI, then he or she likely will want to maintain their primary employment there. This is allowed under a DOE STTR award. Another example, the small business and the research institution view themselves as equal partners on the project. Again, STTR is described as a collaboration between the two organizations, suggesting that the players are equals, even though the award always goes to the small business. And the firm must maintain overall control and has responsibility for the project. Yet another consideration with STTR. Sometimes the applicant may conclude that there is a greater probability of winning an award when teamed with an RI. And of course, if a topic of interest is restricted to an STTR response, then there is no opportunity to submit an SBIR proposal in response to it. It should be noted, however, that the Department of Energy is unique in allowing many of its topics to be submitted as either an SBIR or an STTR award.